Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A lot of noise coming late Sunday night for Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks, potentially really pursuing Justice Haynes out of the transfer portal. And look, Justice Haynes, when he popped up into the transfer portal, to me immediately became one of the best football players in the portal. Clearly, to me, the best running back in the portal. And, a lot of our conversation over the last couple of weeks regarding this South Carolina program and what they're doing in the transfer portal has really centered around how can we give LaNorris Sellers all the pieces around him for him to be successful in 2025? Because you make no mistake about it, if you maximize LaNorris Sellers, if you get the best out of a quarterback like LaNorris Sellers, you can win at the highest level of college football over the next couple of years. And, a lot of that conversation started with what kind of wide receivers do we want to put around LaNorris Sellers? And that's a good starting point, but something we've kind of forgotten to talk about over the last couple of weeks is, hey, one of the best things you can do for a young quarterback is give him a good run game. And Justice Haynes would immediately help South Carolina run the football. And, that's something that is clearly what South Carolina wants to do with LaNorris Sellers at quarterback. When you have such a dynamic quarterback that teams have to account for in the run game, it suddenly becomes a lot easier to run the football. You're losing guys like Rocket Sanders. You're losing guys like Juju McDowell. One, from a depth standpoint, you probably want to add some running backs, but I think you want to add a real difference maker at the running back position, similar to what Rocket Sanders was at times in the 2024 season. To me, Justice Haynes is immediately that kind of difference maker. I want to get into Justice Haynes. Want to talk about some other running backs that South Carolina might be going after. And then we got a couple offensive linemen we got to talk about as well. Before we get into it, as always, to the South Carolina fans, it's been a blast talking this program, and the amount of support y'all continue to show. It means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comment section too. I would love to hear how the South Carolina fans are feeling about Justice Haynes. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, Justice Haynes immediately becomes one of the more sought after transfer portal targets that you see. I'm a Michigan fan. Michigan, I think, is going to get involved with this one. Going to visit Ole Miss, going to visit South Carolina this week. You get into Justice Haynes, and let's just start with the pure football player. Go back to this kid coming out of high school. And, a lot of the South Carolina fans that are listening to this right now that followed this program in the summer months on the recruiting trail, y'all remember Justice Haynes. In my opinion, one of the more impressive running backs I've seen come out of high school over the last couple of years. He goes to Alabama. When he gets his opportunity, I think he's been a very impressive running back. I think the reason for Justice Haynes transferring out of Alabama is, hey, he's going into year 3 and probably hasn't gotten the opportunity he wants over the first 2 years. Well, guess what? Like, South Carolina can offer you that opportunity because they're going to run the football a lot, and Justice Haynes immediately could come in and, for lack of better terms, be the guy in that running back room. And that's not to say I don't believe in a guy like Jawarn Howell, who was redshirting this year for South Carolina. But Justice Haynes, to me, is one of those rare difference makers at the running back position. You even look at the limited opportunities he got in 2024. I mean, averaged 5.6 yards per carry, had 14 missed tackles forced on 70 carries. The numbers were good. He just didn't have a ton of opportunity. And one of the things that I love the most about Justice Haynes is he's kind of a complete running back. He can do everything you want with as a running back. Like, he can run physically between the tackles, 5'11", 210, thick lower half, deals with contact exceptionally well. But when he gets out to space, that acceleration and that long speed, it is certainly there as well. It's easy to find running backs that thrive in certain scenarios. The big bruising running backs that when they get to the second level maybe aren't all that good. And then you get the smaller running backs who can't run up with all that much physicality, but when they do get to space, they exceed. It's hard to find running backs that can give you a blend of both at a high level. To me, Justice Haynes is that guy, and immediately makes this South Carolina rushing game with him and LaNorris Sellers just so difficult to deal with. This is one that, again, we talk so much about maximizing LaNorris Sellers, giving him the pieces to be successful. To me, it might start with giving LaNorris Sellers a good run game to work off of. Because you look at LaNorris Sellers as a quarterback, one, he's a phenomenal athlete, wants to get involved in the rushing attack. More importantly, if you can run the football successfully and force teams to walk some of those safeties into the box and kind of give up some of that space in the deeper third, where does LaNorris Sellers excel? And he excels pushing the ball down the field. I mean, one of the better deep ball throwers that we saw in 2024 completed over 50% of his throws. Give him a good run game, force defenses to have to respect how South Carolina runs the football, and all of a sudden that deeper third starts opening up for LaNorris Sellers and potentially for a guy like Nick Arbor, who I'm extremely excited to see what he can do in 2025. Now, there's another running back that I think is worth mentioning as well. That's true freshman Braylen Russell from Arkansas. A little bit of a different flavor. Justice Haynes to me, that more complete running back that can give you kind of all you're looking for. Braylen Russell, 6'1", 250, and he looks all at 250. This is a guy that has about as thick of a lower half as you'll see at the running back position, deals with contact exceptionally well, runs really, really physically and downhill. But what makes Braylen Russell to me so interesting is the short area quicks in the feet. Like, they're there. Like, when you look at Braylen Russell on paper and say 6'1", 250, he's probably just a running back that's attacking the line of scrimmage and kind of a linear guy. That's how he wants to run the football, but he does have some short area quicks to make people miss. I mean, I think he's immediately one of the better running backs that you see in the portal as well, and he gives you some extra eligibility. He's only going into year 2, so one, you're getting a good running back. You're getting a running back that is still developing, and a running back that's going to be within this program for the next couple of years. Braylen Russell, to me, makes a lot of sense too. Now, who would I take if you kind of ask what running back would I want to see on South Carolina? It probably leans to Justice Haynes, just because one, he's a personal favorite of mine coming out of the 2023 class, but I think more importantly, probably offers a little bit more of a complete running back and allows you to be explosive running the football. But make no mistake about it, Braylen Russell would be a very good addition too. And, you look at what South Carolina has coming back, and we've always talked about, it's important to recognize there's a lot of good players from South Carolina that are going to be back in 2025. So you lose guys like Rocket Sanders, Oscar Attaway, I thought gave South Carolina a lot of good work. Jawarren Howell is a guy that averaged, 7.8 yards per carry at South Carolina State before coming to South Carolina. He's a guy that I think South Carolina could lean on too. They got some good running backs in the room, but with how much South Carolina wants to run the football and what we've seen from them in 2024 in terms of the focal point of the running game it's going to be, you probably want to bring in a bona fide difference maker at the running back position too. Justice Haynes, Braylen Russell make a lot of sense. Now, the offensive line has continued to be a not to me, and I've always been very vocal about this. It's not to me a glaring concern. And yes, you lose 3 veteran bodies on the inside of the offensive line. This is a position that Shane Beamer has recruited relatively well over the last couple of years. You have some guys like Marquis Anderson or Trevon Baugh that are going into year 2 or year 3 that you kind of believe in will be ready in 2025. That doesn't mean you don't want to bring in some veteran talent. And Nick Sharp from Wake Forest committed to South Carolina, I believe, late Saturday night. I don't know if I'm a Wake Forest alum, so I watched a decent amount of Wake Forest. Nick Sharp's an intriguing guy. He's a fire hydrant. That's probably where it starts. He's 6'2", 335. He's not the biggest frame. He's not the longest in the arms, but his anchor, and when he gets hands on you, he's really, really effective. Now, the thing with Nick Sharp is you're probably looking for a guy that gives you more center guard versatility. I'm not sure if Nick Sharp gives you that. It's never really played center at Wake Forest. This is a guy that started almost every single game for Wake Forest in 2024. Only gave up 2 sacks and pass protection. And I think could be better in the run game than what we've seen. Wake Forest runs that weird slow mesh where they don't really let their offensive linemen fire off the ball. I would be interested to see how Nick Sharp looks in a little bit more of an offensive scheme that allows him to be the explosive, powerful athlete that I think he is. So I really do like this pickup. And at the very least, you're replacing, 3 veteran offensive linemen on the inside. Go add a veteran guy. I think another guy that I think would be a bona fide stud for South Carolina to pick up is Jordan White. You look at Jordan White, well, the thing I love most about him is 2,200 snaps in his college football career, gives you that legit center guard versatility, right? Started at center one year, started at guard the other year. So he's played a lot of football both at center and guard. So he gives you that position flex. And if you're South Carolina trying to create your best five starting offensive line, having a guy that can do both, but that I think is a plug and play dude that plenty of Power Four programs are going after, this makes a lot of sense. And I think most importantly, really an experienced presence on the offensive line that is going to be relatively young. And South Carolina has a lot of guys that have played some football. So we're talking about Tree. We're talking about Josiah Thompson. Like, they've played a lot of football, but they're both only going into their second and third years respectively. So they're still young cats on the offensive line. Jordan White kind of, gluing that young offensive line together, I think would make a lot of sense. And then Dominic Gadice is also going to take a visit to South Carolina. So I went to Wake Forest, but I'm a Michigan fan, and so I know both of Nick Sharp, Dominic Gadice pretty well. Dom, kind of a really fascinating story. Came out of high school, thought he was going to be a defensive lineman, like kind of a heavy-handed edge rusher. Puts on a ton of weight, switches to the inside of the offensive line. Not a guy that was at the forefront of Michigan fans' minds going into 2024. But you read the fall practice notes and say, all right, this guy Dominic Gadice, he won the center job coming out of camp. Now he relinquished that, and it wasn't the best year from him in 2024. I think that had to do with some other things, quarterback play not being great. It was a brand new offensive line, so the chemistry and gel wasn't always there. For him to emerge as the starting center out of fall camp, look, Sharon Moore knows how to evaluate offensive linemen. And for him to put together those kind of fall practices tells me this kid can play at a high level. And again, he's a guy that's been around the block, has started games at center. I think, again, one of those additions that makes sense. It's not going to be the flashiest one, but Shane Beamer, South Carolina, they want to create as much competitive depth as possible. I think South Carolina has been bitten in the butt at times over the last 2 years with not having enough depth on the offensive line. Dom, guy like Jordan White, Nick Sharp, they all go a long way in answering those kind of questions. We'll see how it turns out. Most excitingly, we'll see what happens with Justice Haynes. It'd be really fun to see him in the South Carolina offense in 2025. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.